How's it going, everybody? Hope you're doing well. Welcome to the 5th installment of the Ultimate Killer Guides. I left this one for you all to decide and you guys wanted Nemesis, so here it is. In this we're going to be talking about everything you need to know to become a fantastic Nemesis player, from perks and add-ons, powers, tips and tricks, and even how to counter him as a survivor. So sit back, relax, and let's begin with the Ultimate Nemesis Guide. Now, really quick before I start, I just want to mention the fact that I am full of cold at the moment, and as of recording this, my voice may not sound as angelic as it normally does, but that is not an excuse. You guys have waited far too long for this already. But also remember to leave a like and subscribe if it helped for more DBD Killer content, and I also do stream on Twitch 5 times a week, so if you have any questions or just want to come and chill, the link is in the description. But let's get into it. Let's start with his perks and his add-ons. Now firstly, with his add-ons, I have to say that straight away Nemesis doesn't have the best variety. Making this, I tested all of them as much as I could, and it's going to be a small recommendation list, as the only ones that actually seem to do anything were the add-ons that increase the base zombie walking speed, which includes Brian Intestines and Mikhail's Eye, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and the depleted ink ribbon. The only thing worth mentioning is that if you're using the depleted ink ribbon, it is advised not to kill the zombies. Just let them roam around and add pressure to the map, because if you kill them, they have a higher respawn time. But by far his absolute best add-on, and one that you should try and run most times, would be Marvin's Blood, which increases the mutation rate when hitting survivors with your whip. This makes it so much easier to get his power to tier 3, and when it is tier 3, he is so much better at what he does. Literally every other add-on is pretty much take it or leave it. None of them really help. I never run add-ons that revolve around the vaccine or the boxes, as you only get 4 of them, and most of the time it just doesn't really add up to much. I will say a couple of extra ones you could use if you have nothing else would maybe be the Zombie Heart or the Tyrant Gore, which increases the mutation rate faster when you're hitting zombies with your whip, or his Iridescent Shattered Stars badge, which increases movement speed by the zombies by quite a considerable lot when a generator gets completed for 60 seconds after. It's alright, the other ones are take 'em or leave 'em. My personal 2 favourite to run together are Marvin's Blood and Mikhail's Eye, both yellow, so very easy to maintain, and when paired they probably do the best for Nemesis on a whole. Now moving on to perks, as before I'm going to recommend 4 builds for 4 different playstyles and levels. For high MMR players, run Corrupt Intervention, Save the Best for Last, Pop Goes the Weasel, and Tinkerer. A fairly generic high rank build, but it works for Nemesis really well in giving you extra time and pressure whilst you level up your mutation rate and become the strongest version if you can with tier 3, and hopefully getting some high stacks of Save the Best for Last whilst you're at it, before using that pressure to dominate the survivors later in the trial. For newer players, or for those who don't have many perks unlocked, use Eruption, Sloppy Butcher, Spies from the Shadows, and Lethal Pursuer. Use Lethal Pursuer at the start of the game to immediately find survivors and get into a chase to build your power. Kick gens along the way with Eruption and get extra information from Spies of the Shadows. Sloppy Butcher just to kind of help keep the pressure on whilst you're attacking. Now, not his most impressive build, but low ranking players will probably have a lot of luck with this one whilst you're learning him. For aggressive Nemesis players, use Lethal Pursuer, Save the Best for Last, Discordance, and Pop Goes the Weasel. Immediately get into the chases and start your mutation rate and Save the Best for Last stacks at the start. Then with Pop and Discordance you'll get some great information on where you need to pressure and how many survivors are there. Also, Discordance will help keep the pressure with zombies for a reason that I'll get into later with the tips. And lastly, for an insane zombie speedrun build, you run Shattered Stars badge, Mikhail's Eye, Discordance, Ruin, Undying, and Devour. For this build, let the zombies do the work for you. Ruin, Undying, and Discordance are perfect for Nemesis, as soon as the speedy zombies head in the way of the gen, the survivors will either have to give up the gen and lose progress, or take hits, go down, and lose progress anyway. Then build stacks with Devour for insta-downs and to keep your pressure at maximum at all times. And there it is, there's 4 different builds for 4 different playstyles. Now let's move on to the Nemesis power and how it works. Firstly, he comes equipped with 2 AI zombies. Now, even though they're not programmed the best and they may get stuck from time to time, these 2 zombies will scour the map for extra pressure and information. The zombies can also react to perks, so you can even customise your playstyle to help bring the best out of the zombies. When a zombie hits a clean survivor, it will infect them with the T-virus like your whip would, and then after that you are able to injure them with your whip, or if zombies hit them again, they will take off a health state or potentially put them into dying. Next, moving on to Nemesis's other power, the Tentacle Strike. Now, press and hold M2 to ready your whip and then press M1 to attack. The whip starts at tier 1 and will hit anything within a 5 meter line directly in front of you when you attack, and it's the base version of this power. Hit enough survivors with it and you'll unlock tier 2, which you'll know from the sound cue. and the noticeable difference in his arm. This version allows you to do everything previously mentioned, but now you can also use the whip to break pallets and breakable walls while still maintaining a little bit of movement speed whilst the animation recovers. It's phenomenal. And finally we have Tier 3, the strongest version of his whip, and Tier 3 increases the tentacle strike range to 6 meters from 5, and also increases movement speed whilst charging your whip. Tier 3 is obviously what you want to try and get, but the added pressure of Tier 2 alone is worth going after, as it just makes the chases much easier, so try and upgrade this tier as often as you can. Also worth noting, you can attack zombies with your whip for small increases to your virus level. The zombies will die and reappear after a short amount of time, so be careful when you attack zombies with this, as you don't want to lose pressure for the sake of a small boost. Nemesis's whip is also able to hit survivors over low loops and vaults, so if a survivor is running around something that's about waist height for them, you should be alright to try and whip over the loop to hit them for free. And also whilst they vault pallets and windows. It is going to take some time to get used to the whip and what it's truly capable of, but it's much easier to pick up than some of the other killer's power. Now that's covered, we're going to move on to some general tips and tricks that should give you the edge over the survivors. Now the first thing that I see killers not doing very well is using the zombies for free information. When the zombies are walking idly, they will have their hands by their sides, but if their arms are stretched out, that means they are currently or have very recently been chasing a survivor. So use this information to know where to head and to catch survivors out of place. Now, we've all done it. Using Nemesis's whip can be very inviting, however, if you rely on it too much and use it at the wrong times, you can lose so much time and pressure trying to whip over something you can easily get an M1 punch instead with. So don't over rely on it and use it instead to make survivors panic and get them to use a dead hard, or to get greedy at loops so that you can M1 them as normal. Remember, for the most part you'll want to be punching survivors instead of whipping them, as it saves time and pressure. Only whip if there is a bit of distance between you or if they're about to be locked into an animation. But this is something you'll get used to doing once you've played him for a little bit. Number 3, zombies are actually incredible counters to DS. If you've downed a survivor and think they have DS and there's a zombie next to you, pick them up and make sure the zombie is on your left hand side. When you get DS'd, the zombie will immediately re-down them for an easy waste of their perk and no loss in pressure. Now, similar to pouncing as Victor or shredding as Demo, Nemesis's whip can be used very well if survivors are bottlenecking themselves down thin corridors or in between pallets. So if you can whip them as they're about to enter the pallet or enter a thin walkway, hit them for an easy hit, as there is nowhere for the survivor to move and avoid it. Now next, one of the easiest ways for survivors to get you to miss your whip is by running directly in front of you whilst you charge it. The whip is insanely hard to hit survivors when they are looping directly in front of you. So instead of committing to the whip and most times not hitting it anyway, stop charging and punch as normal. Remember, you want to use Nemesis's whip for range and not for close encounters. If you can, you want to push survivors to loops where your tentacle strike can hit over. Your power is absolutely useless when being ranged at something you can't hit over and you become an M1 killer. So try to lead survivors to waist high loops like cars and tyres so that you can still get hits and make them panic into mistakes that then you can profit off. Now with Nemesis, you can't really mind game as much as the other killers, as he is the tallest killer in the game, which means survivors can see the top of your little head much easier. So instead of doubling back at loops constantly, commit to the route and either make them make a mistake or get them to waste a pallet for the hit. More times than not, a direct approach with Nemesis will get you much more hits than all the fancy mind games around loops. He is a much more direct attacking killer. Next, if you see a survivor running towards a tile with a zombie at it, try and move the survivor to the tile or the particular path so that the zombie can either hit them in a surprise hit or at least make them alter their path and panic so that you can hit them as normal anyway. Try and get the most value out of your zombies that you can. They are absolute free pressure that is sometimes a little bit slept on. Now, something I see all the time is killers not strafing with the Nemesis whip. Whilst the attack happens, move left or right whilst the animation plays and it will widen the hitbox, and the amount of extra hits you can get off this method is insane. To put it into context, when strafing with the whip, the hitbox is actually wider than Pyramid Head's Punishment of the Damned. So start strafing and I promise you'll start hitting more whips. Also, zombies are notified from alerts and will head towards whatever caused it. This makes perks such as Discordance fantastic on Nemesis, as when it pops, zombies will immediately start walking in the direction to pressure. So feel free to bring perks that will help keep zombies in the game and give them as much pressure as possible. And something that I also see killers doing from time to time as Nemesis is A, punching zombies, and B, getting rid of them in really good spots. To start with, there is more or less no benefit from punching a zombie. The only reason you should be destroying them as Nemesis is for a tiny bit of mutation rate if you're just about to hit tier 2 or tier 3, or for making them respawn if they get stuck. But please don't punch them, it is a complete waste, and make sure you're looking where the zombie is before you do. If it's near an uncompleted gen, a high traffic area, or near a hook survivors, keep them there so they can do what they do best and patrol the area for you for free. If you're heading to a zombie that is chasing somebody and the zombie stops moving with 0 scratch marks around, check any nearby lockers. Lockers stop zombies' detections completely, even if you do it right in front of one, so it may be a good place to check for hiding survivors. But it is also worth saying that this is no way a guarantee, just something to potentially remember. And the last tip I can give you guys is to try not to destroy pallets and breakable walls until you've hit tier 2, as not only does this get you in chases faster at the start of the game, but unless the pallet that they've dropped is a god pallet for survivors, you may be able to hit them and get tier 2 anyway, and then destroy it so much easier, especially if they've ran away from the pallet. Just carry on chasing the survivor, and when you hit tier 2, you'll be able to quickly get all of the pallets removed as you run by them. And guys, that's pretty much everything I can think of to help you with Nemesis as a killer and in the chase. With these tips, hopefully you'll be able to get the most out of his power and really start unlocking his true potential, which can be fantastic sometimes if you pressure it right. But now lastly, for all you survivor players out there, let's get on how to counter the Nemesis as a survivor. Firstly, as I mentioned before, Nemesis is the tallest killer in the game, so try to run him at loops like the jungle gym and hay bales, as you can see the top of his head for most of them and be able to see where he's mind gaming clearer and counter them appropriately. Now, I also won't say that wasting pallets is a good thing against the Nemesis, but a great way to weaken him, especially if he's in tier 1, is to bait him hitting you through a pallet, then when he misses, going back and throwing the pallet down whilst he's locked in the animation. Then he's wasting his time, he hasn't got his hit, and now also has to deal with the pallet at this loop. Maybe even try to get a couple of loops around the pallet before you throw it just to really get the most use out of it. Now with vaccines, similar to Plague, you don't really want to start using these until there's only a couple of gens left. You don't want to waste them whilst Nemesis is in his lower tiers of his power, because he's just going to hit you again anyway and he'll only be able to get stronger faster. So when he's in tier 3 and there are only 1 or 2 gens left, then use the vaccines, as you'll be able to chase him a lot easier when he's also at full power. And there are only 4 vaccines on the map, so 1 for every survivor, and you don't want to waste it at the start when you need it at the end. You can also crush zombies under pallets and blind them to remove or stun them for a short while. This can be really handy if you're on a gen and one is nearby, as blinding them will keep them stuck in place for a while whilst you either pop the gen or move to a different tile. And pallet crushing kills them and you have to wait a short while before they respawn. I wouldn't recommend pallet crushing them, as you'll really want to save the pallets for Nemesis, but in dire situations it is a possibility. If the Nemesis is charging his whip and is close to hitting you, do not vault pallets or breakable walls. Instead, bait that you're going to do so and move away at the last second to make him miss and waste his time. And then, when he's in the miss animation and recovering, vault as normal or run to a different tile for extra distance. If you vault, it's just going to give him a free hit. Same with pallets, he's waiting for you to be locked in an animation to strike, so don't give him it. If there isn't anything close you can mind game around, try to head close to him. This will make him panic and either use his whip anyway and probably miss, or uncharge his tentacle, wait for the cooldown and then try and hit you with his normal M1. So use this to your advantage to waste his time and get him to whiff and keeping him weak as possible for as long as possible. And the last tip is just to try and be aware of where the zombies are as much as you can. Yes, I know this is easier said than done, but having a slight understanding of where they are located means if you get into a chase with the Nemesis, you know where to avoid so that you don't get third-partied by one of his zombies. And guys, that's it. That's going to wrap up this installment of the Ultimate Killer Guides. I really hope you guys enjoyed this. Remember, if you do, drop a like and subscribe, as the more love you show these vids, the more I'll do on them. And if you guys want to vote on who I make the next Killer Guide on, feel free to swing by the Discord and check the Killer Guide votes tab now. The vote will end on the 31st of October, and you guys get to have your say in who you want next. That's it, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all have a fantastic day. Thank you once again for checking out this video. I hope to see your Nemesis is out there in full swing in the trials. But yeah, thank you all so much. Take care of yourselves. Bye bye for now.